who's on, so I'll go ahead. His I'm going to call to order. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the February 11th, 2025 minutes. Do I have a motion?
Move. Second.
All in favor of approving the February 11th, 2025 minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody against? Crickets. Okay, moving on to our one discussion item today, which is the transportation RFP. Superintendent Degner, can you take us away?
Yes, I will. So, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Tonight, I'm going to turn it over to Adam here very directly to kind of walk through the process we followed for the request for proposals for a transportation provider and what we received back in that. And then we'll be asking for your support of that tonight during the regularly scheduled meeting at 6 o'clock. But we wanted to do some in-depth conversation with you because we know there's been some questions and just kind of evaluate some of our experience with the provider as we went along, and then what this partnership will continue to look like here moving forward. So with that, I'm going to ask Adam to jump in and give you an overview, and then of course we'll be happy to take questions.
Yeah, thank you. And also thanks to Esme Davis and Nick Proud for working. We worked collaboratively on this RFP process, so encourage them to jump in as well where there are areas where there are things that I do not mention, but just a quick overview of the process. So we did release a full RFP for this service. The copy of that RFP is attached to the Operations Committee item and the board agenda item for tonight. We really went into this hoping that we were going to get multiple bids, obviously, and we did have interest from 3 companies who came to our initial meeting and were involved with our question and answer process. In the end, we did only end up getting 1 bid for this service, and it was from Iowa Central, our current provider. So again, that was something that we really did. We were seeking out very much additional bids, but at the same time, I think it also speaks a little bit to the challenge of even obtaining service in this area right now. It's not a market where it's so easy for companies to expand that there's a whole lot of competition. There's a lot of cost associated for a company expanding into a new market. And I think that we ran into that a little bit. In terms of the bid itself, the bid does reflect some cost increases. I'll go into a little bit of detail on those here in a minute. Beyond the costs, there were some elements included in the bid response from Iowa Central that addressed strengthening partnerships and collaboration with drivers, which is something that we made clear even in our RFP itself was a priority for the district. We wanted to work with a student transportation company that was also going to work well with its own employees, and so that was a priority for us and one that was communicated and one that they did address in their response as well. Further, we wanted to continue to explore green transportation options. So we required as part of our RFP that all responding bidders provide an option for scaling up electric bus fleets. And so that's not something right away that we will implement, but we have the option to implement that. And the way that that's structured as we required within the RFP was that at any time we can go out to the provider and let them know that we plan to implement a certain number of electric buses. It is our responsibility in that case to build the charging infrastructure. It is their responsibility to tell us what spec that charging infrastructure needs to meet. It's also their responsibility to identify and seek any funding opportunities that may exist for subsidizing the cost of implementation of electric bus fleets. So included in the full response, we do have information as it relates to what our costs would be, what our options would be for implementing those as we move forward as well. So we're excited about that as something as we move forward. I do want to touch a little bit on costs, and then I'll open it up for any questions that you have. The cost structure, and there's an attachment to the board item called cost summary. And the cost structure really reflects a 4%, slightly over 4%, so like 4.3% annual increase in costs. The one exception to that is the 26-27 school year, which is the second year of the agreement. And the reason that that one jumps higher is that that's also the year that they need to renegotiate their deal with their employees. And so, you know, in a way, even though that represents a greater cost increase for that year, we also view that as a good sign that they intend to, you know, work productively with their with the bus driver union in moving that forward. So we do see again that 484 cost increase structure, which is obviously more than the increase that we get from the state in terms of our annual revenue increase. And so while on one hand it does align with industry trends, we are not an outlier as we look at other districts and compare our costs to theirs. It does speak to the need for us to probably continue to have some discussions as it relates to efficiency surrounding bus services. So beyond the costs themselves, you know, the per route cost for, you know, 35 to 71 passenger vehicle, what we do have some control over is how many routes we're running, you know, whether we're making decisions that mitigate the need to add additional routes, that sort of thing. And so, you know, as we move forward, knowing that we have these cost increases built into this contract, we need to be mindful of how we're approaching that in terms of whether we can make decisions to make our program delivery more efficient just from the top level. So with that, you know, our recommendation is to accept the Iowa Central bid. It was the only bid, and it is one that meets the district needs at a fundamental level. So without bearing that too much, I will ask Esme and Nick, anything I didn't mention there that you want to highlight or point out? Awesome. Any questions from the board about the process or about the bid itself?
I know the state does the minutes per year. How many days do we have for our school year where buses run?
What do we
Here, do you
do?
know?
I think it's like 175, I
I was
believe.
gonna say
175.
I just wanted to
Yep.
put
Yep.
the numbers.
Yep.
If you don't mind,
Yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
in the memo that I have in front of me that you passed out, summary of the bid evaluation section, bullet number 2,
Yes.
says eliminating middle school shuttle routes. Could you just comment on
Yep.
on
Go
how
ahead, speak
it's
to
going
that.
to be communicated to parents and any affected students?
It'll be in place next year. This year, just with the change to middle schools and kind of our current agreement, we ended up having to come up with some solutions, and Esme may want to chime in a little more. At some of our middle schools, they're bringing kids to middle school and then going back out and getting another round of kids and then bringing them. So we have some kids getting there much earlier than we would like, and it's caused a few kind of growing pains and headaches within our middle school. So that was something that we wanted to make sure was addressed within this process. I don't know, how many do we have going? Five. So,
Five shuttles.
5 routes.
5 shuttles.
yeah, so that this would take care of that. Just as we changed over to the middle schools, we knew there would be some increased number of routes, just because you're taking a grade level away from probably a semi-walkable or a walkable elementary school to, you know, go to a middle school setting.
And will we be able to communicate to parents well in advance?
Yeah.
Of the change?
Charlie, does that make sense? So we're not ending transportation for anybody. It's just a matter of getting rid of that double loop. So they'll all still be on the bus. They'll just have that same arrival
We'll
time.
Change the times.
Yep.
You change the times, and we'll give notification of that.
I think
Yep.
we're welcome to change.
I think they'll
instead
like
of
that.
getting picked up so early. And a lot of the students are waiting between 30 to 40 minutes roughly.
Oh, okay.
Between 20 to 40
It's a
minutes.
positive thing for families for the most part.
Did we get any feedback from the two who were interested and then decided not to bid about what the obstacles were for them?
Yeah, we did get feedback from one of the companies. One of the companies that was interested was a California-based company. They came to the initial session, but then we didn't get any additional feedback from them. The other one was a Wisconsin-based, I believe.
They have an operation.
They have an operation in
They're
Wisconsin.
based out of Boston.
That's
They have
right.
an
It was
operation
bi-coastal,
out of
I remember.
Wisconsin. We had the regional,
Yep.
because he came in person, so
Yep.
at the time, we thought that was
Yep.
encouraging, because he was the regional kind of
Yeah.
person
And-
who oversaw.
And they let us know that at this point, their concern was being able to expand into a new market. So for them, it was really an issue of capacity. In fact, they made a point to still send, a notice by our deadline for RFP bids being due that simply said, that reason, and then also said that they would strongly desire to be included in any future RFPs that the district releases. So, at least in that case, it had nothing to do with, there was anything about our program or our requirements that was not, attractive to them. It was just a business decision, I think.
And then we have no way to control, so the 8% bump in 26-27, we have no way to control how central, we would hope that they're gonna reinvest in their employees, but there's nothing in the RFP that makes them use that money in that way.
Correct. And my understanding is that we have no mechanism to do that, so.
It's just a matter of, like Adam said, whoever would have been successful in the RFP process would have inherited the current agreement, and then that's just anticipating there's gonna be some change as we go forward.
Other questions?
How many routes do you currently have?
She'll get it for you.
I think one thing while she's looking at, Adam had made a comment about, where that percentage increase is and looking at transportation efficiency. And we know from looking at those budget reductions the last couple of years too, it's probably not just a transportation efficiency piece because we're already super efficient in transportation. So other areas, is also an implication for us about where we can be efficient to take on those increased costs because we don't have an exorbitant number of routes. Did you see how many?
65.
65.
Just out of curiosity, how often do we reach out to parents that might be on the way to be like, if the bus isn't full, hey, we have a bus driving by your house for XYZ amount?
That's the Pay to Ride program.
Yeah, the pay to ride program, do we reach out to parents on that or let them know?
You guys want
I'm
to
just
talk about
thinking
that
ways to
process a
reach-
little bit? Yeah.
Reach efficiency if you don't have if we have a bus with 30 students and we can pick up 20 more and have 20 paying students, then you open up.
So we do offer the Pay to Ride program, which is, the application will come out probably the end of April, beginning of May. And then I work with Kristen in getting a communication out to all the district families and say, hey, the application is available, go out, complete it, it is a first come, first served basis. And so once we build our routes over the summer, we go back in and check to see which routes can incorporate the Pay to Ride students to be able to get the buses full. But for the most part, most of our buses are full.
Okay.
There's not a lot of available space on really any of the buses. You might see a route, like a middle school route or a high school route in the afternoon because a number of kids are participating in an after-school activity. That might look a little less, but generally, we still have to account for that seat because they're using it in the morning, or they may use it when the basketball season gets done.
And one thing I'll note is that there is an item on the consent agenda for tonight's meeting for setting those pay-to-ride fees for next year, which includes it's actually the roughly 4% increase that's reflected here for that service for the full pay option. Then there's also an option for families that qualify for reduced price lunch, and then it's free for students who qualify for free lunch.
So that's on the main agenda?
Correct, yep.
Consent agenda.
Consent.
Yeah, yeah. Any other questions?
No, but I did it, so do we anticipate then each year probably increasing that pay to ride cost? in
Yeah,
kind of in
more or
proportion
less
with-
in line with our costs here. And we're actually bound by state law that we can never make a profit on our pay-to-ride program. So generally, we've tried to maintain that cost in line with the increases we see in general.
If I'm in the community and I see this, maybe one of the questions I have on my mind is, because we only had one provider, we see these increases year after year. why doesn't the district just run their own fleet? And, you know, we haven't recommended that, and that's not something we would continue to recommend, but I think it's just important for us to put that out there, that we have looked at all of the options. And given the stringent bus laws that are already in place here in Iowa with the additions of adding seatbelts, it's just getting more and more expensive. And so I appreciate, Mitch, the suggestion about how we make ourselves more efficient, because I think that's what we have to look at inside the provider that we have, trying to push them to continue to be more green. Buying new buses are going to run us $100,000. Electric bus is more like $200,000. So going from 0 buses to one that'll feed 65 routes is a significant cost to bite off just to begin a bus program. And so where we are, I think it is trying to think creatively about how we look for those efficiencies with the contractors that we already have. Just because at this point, trying to swallow that apple whole and bring that program inside the organization would not be in our best interest from a financial standpoint, or quite honestly, probably from an operational standpoint, given what it would take to stand that, to continue that, to stand that up. I know nobody asked that, but I think that's something that probably, that question's probably sitting out there for people. So I think it's just nice to at least have that conversation a little bit.
Did the district at one point have it in-house and then decide to branch out? If you don't have the history lesson on hand, you don't really.
Yeah,
I have history.
Yeah.
It's 38 years.
I was gonna say it. Yeah.
Any other questions on this? All right, thank you.
Okay, unless there's any other questions, we have the next meeting. Next agenda setting, the next operations committee meeting, doesn't have a date on there, but it'll be sometime next month.
Yeah.
Are we getting into the facility stuff yet? With
Yeah,
the
that's
arts
what Chase and I were just talking about. We did an initial receipt call on the fine arts study, and so we think we'll be ready during operations next month to bring that back, that initial report back to us about the fine arts study we've been conducting.
So we'll make sure to invite everybody to that meeting.
Yeah, we might just reframe it as a work session then,
Okay.
do director and then go, yeah.
Schedule a full hour. You guys-
Yeah, I don't know if it take the full hour, but we probably won't want to schedule anything else unless it's urgent
Okay.
next to it, so.
Any other questions? Looking for a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye. All those not in favor?